President, would you intervene in the Dockworkers strike if they go on strike on Tuesday?
No.
Why not?
Because it's collective bargaining. I don't believe in Taft-Hartley.
Howdy, y'all. This is Damani Felder. These are perilous times in American history, and now more than ever, we need individuals who are willing to wage war on the ideological battlefield with like-minded individuals. And I can think of no better place to start than my friends at the Don't Unfriend Me show. So thank you for being here, and enjoy the show.
Do you want the truth? Are you tired of being so confused? You feel like you're more f***ed up than the lies on the evening news? Well, just step right in. We can talk about it all as friends.
Here we go again. Supply side economics. Shortages are abound, baby. Well, that's okay because I've got my Kamala Harris toilet paper. I'm all stocked up and ready to go. Thanks to Amy from the Don't Unfriend Me show. She will be on tonight at 7 o'clock. You got to stop by and say hello. My name is Matthew Spear. We're talking about the looming dock workers strike, and we're about T-minus 2 hours from a lot of the dock workers walking out, and this will be official tonight at 12:01. And this is a huge thing, and I know a lot of people are going, well, strikes happen, but this is an election year, and we already see that the unions are falling by the wayside when it comes to Democratic control. This is very reminiscent of the Carter administration as far as not getting the support from the unions. Now, remember, there's been 3 presidents who have essentially utilized what is known as the Taft-Hartley Act. And this was in 1947. And essentially, it gives the president of the United States, they can assign an arbiter to come in and investigate. And ultimately, if it's based upon the means of national security, and this would impact national security, the United States or President Biden could go ahead and force the union workers to continue their work. Now, this has been invoked 3 times, in 62 with Kennedy, in 64 and 67 with Johnson, and then in 1978 with Jimmy Carter. Now, he had the opportunity to do it a year prior, and we'll talk about that, but he actually used it with the coal miner workers, and this lost him a ton of support from the unions. Now, this is a concerning issue for Kamala Harris, because this obviously is an election year. So listen to this just so you have an understanding where we're at, and I'll be right back.
But look at where Kamala Harris is today. She's only leading by 9 points. That would be the worst Democratic performance in a generation, 10 points off the mark of Joe Biden, who of course won 4 years ago, was sort of that union guy, Union Joe, right? Won it by 19 points. She's 10 points off his mark, and the worst in a generation.
The interesting thing about this is that we saw some polls that came through from the union and the Teamsters Union, and this was the national poll, and it forced the Teamsters Union not to endorse a candidate, which is the first time this happened since Ronald Reagan, really. Now, certain portions of unions have dropped off the wayside for Democrat control, but not nationally. Now, this means that the actual union members voted predominantly with Donald Trump, over 64-65%. with about 34-35% coming in for Kamala Harris. This is devastating to her, and obviously this poll shows that is a major loss for her and shows that there is a very large shift from the parties happening, and this can wreak devastation on a campaign that's depending on every vote. Here is a scene that was done earlier on the East Coast in regards to union workers dropping out of their work, clearing out their stuff, and not coming back. And the interesting point also is not just the dock workers, but the rail worker unions across the U.S. are also refusing to work, emptying train cars, assuming that the product will not arrive and be unloaded. This obviously creates some pretty huge issues for the administration. Watch this.
If you're a teacher, punch out, grab your stuff, go home. Let's get out of here. We are officially on strike. Punch out, let's go. We are officially on strike.
What about their feelings?
Who are we?
Teamsters!
Who are we?
Teamsters!
Who are we?
Teamsters!
Who are we? No contract. No contract.
Well, I guess learning to protest just isn't for burning down cities. Now, if we take a look at overall who this impacts, well, this is going to impact petrochemical, large steel producers, vehicle manufacturers, energy, electric machinery, things to that effect. But because all of this is going to have to be redistributed to the West Coast, and let's remember, the Baltimore Bridge collapsed just about 6-7 months ago, what that will create is a lot of that redistribution on the East Coast will be shut down because of this strike. That will have an inadvertent effect on Q4 retail and not just be pushed out past the first quarter after the election. And the reason why is that if more boats are having to be unloaded on the West Coast, this will impact Midwest and West Coast distribution for retail, Amazon, et cetera, because there will be a longer wait line for vessels offloading. You'll have people working overtime, increased cost, and therefore you might see a demand issue where there'll be a high demand, high increase in cost, demand still high, and those companies stop producing because they can't get the product delivered. This all creates a quagmire and will impact the East Coast as well. This is a massive issue. This is one that Kamala Harris does not want in any way, shape, or form. When we break down the details of this, I talked a little bit about when this took place, but these supply delays will slow down imports and exports. It disrupts the flow of goods overall. And this, once again, $5 billion per day, there's a huge push to get this fixed. But the quagmire is if Biden steps in and goes ahead and enacts the Taft-Hartley Act and forces them to go back to work, this is going to completely obliterate any Kamala Harris support, and they will move to Trump. And if he does nothing, well, the consumer is going to be upset and more feels about a horrible economy and Christmas canceled in the United States. Remember when that happened during COVID and everyone said that. Besides the economic loss, you could see some shortages, supply side, that could impact the economy in the upcoming year or two. In fact, they're saying that this strike could have every day of impact extends 4 to 6 weeks from the date that they would come back to work. Also, this could lead to increased consumer prices because inflation would obviously be impacted. We saw this with COVID. And up to 1.2 million jobs in shipping and related sectors could also be impacted for the busiest time of the year, the Super Bowl, so to speak, for most of these locations. Farmers can lose up to $3 billion per month in export revenue simply because that their stock will not be able to sustain any long periods of sitting at the farm or sitting at the dock because it is agricultural related. You have potential increase in fuel prices. Once again, we saw this with COVID with supply side, 10 to 15% across the board, not very good in an election year. Retailers could experience a 20% inventory shortfall, which would then obviously impact the stock market as revenue reports for Q4, the busiest, 67% of the revenue that takes place in all retailers is done during Q4, would be devastating. But that congestion that I was talking about can also last weeks, 4 to 6 weeks after the strike ends. Disruption affects ports handling 25% of global trade worldwide. So not only is the old adage that when the United States gets a cold, everyone else gets the flu, this would have a huge impact as well. You may have noticed that I made a video about, I think it was probably right around Joe Biden's maybe March or June, right after his inauguration. I made parallels to Jimmy Carter and said that Joe Biden would be worse than Jimmy Carter, that there is going to be no even comparison based upon Biden's failures and Jimmy Carter. And this has been absolutely true in every facet. And just one more thing that puts a nail in that coffin before this man hopefully leaves office and Donald Trump takes over is the last time that this particular group went on strike was in 1977 under Jimmy Carter. Just a little history for you. Folks, thanks for watching the Don't Unfriend Me show. Hope it was informative. You can see us tonight at 7 o'clock. Stop by thedumbshow.com if you would not mind. Pick up yourself a hat, a shirt, some coffee, something like that. And no, we don't have the toilet paper, but make sure to stock up because it looks like we're going to need it if you haven't already. Thanks for watching the Don't Unfriend Me show. I will see you next time.
Adjusting transmitter output. This is the Don't Unfriend Me Show with your hosts, Matt, Leroy, Amy, and Olivia. Geopolitics, military analysis, and election coverage. Coming to you live on all major social media channels at The Dumb Show. Honest, direct, unfiltered. We can agree, we can disagree. Just don't unfriend me.